Skip it up and that up. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Rich of Review Tech USA, and I'm joined by Jarek again.
What's going on, guys?
Now, you probably remember Jarek. We did a video almost probably about 2 years ago now. God. Or at least over like a year and a half, or like around a year and a half, where we were talking about Nintendo and how a lot of the moves they were making were disastrous. And it was a very popular video and very unpopular video simultaneously, to the point that to this day, almost, I would say about 2 years later, Jarek still gets Twitter messages asking him to do another video with me. So here he is. We're actually going to do two topics today. One of them is going to be talking about 4K, which Jarek is going to spearhead because he knows a hell of a lot more about that than I do. And we're going to talk about Codename NX. And this time, shockingly, we don't have nothing but mostly negative things to say about Nintendo. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I'll introduce what we're going to talk about with 4K first. Now, if you guys know, you can get friggin' 4K TVs everywhere. 4K TVs you could buy from no-name brands for like $400, $500, or even like Sharp and Vizio selling for $500. The problem is there's no goddamn 4K content anywhere. Unless you have a gaming PC hooked up to your 4K TV, you ain't getting shit. It's just, to put it blunt and sound very untechnical, there's virtually no content out there unless you go on Netflix, and there's, like we were talking about this before, like 3 shows. One of them being House of Cards, and I think the later Breaking Bad's, like you said, and I forgot the other one. But there's something interesting that's about to come with 4K, and it may be misleading consumers. And this is where I'm going to have Jarek take over, and we'll discuss it from there.
Yeah, it's what I think I'm going to refer to as the 4K sham that's about to unfold. And specifically, it's going to be with the rollout of 4K Blu-ray. A lot of the studios right now are kind of gearing up in preparation for that, because it was supposed to come out first quarter of this year. And I'm pretty sure that's still on track. I know Sony announced a bunch of titles. Warner Brothers recently just made an announcement they're going to release like 36 titles this year. But whether or not that's going to be actually 4K material is kind of in question right now, because during the transition going to digital, before everything was shot, 35mm film, so the resolution is there. However, kind of starting 2005 or so going forward till now, the digital cinema transition started taking hold with players such as Red coming in, and even Arri having their own digital cinema systems coming out, kind of taking over the market. However, not everything in recent times was actually shot at 4K. Mm-hmm. First thing that comes to mind are a lot of the big Marvel films recently. Let's just point out the Avengers. Those were shot at on the Arri Alexa, and that camera maxes out at 2.5K. So if they release a 4K Blu-ray version of the Avengers, that's going to be a flat-out lie, because that movie does not exist in 4K anywhere, nor will it ever exist in 4K anywhere. If anything, it's just going to be a 2K to 4K upscale, and they're going to package it as 4K, and consumers are going to eat it up and not know what they're buying. So that's going to be a problem, and that's not even to get into things like special effects and digital intermediates and so forth. Even a lot of projects to this day that are shot on film or Red or other 4K systems, a lot of them only get a 2K finish and 2K effects. For example, Ridley Scott's The Martian comes to mind. That was a recent big budget movie. It was shot 5K Red, but all the post work was done at 2K before it ever went anywhere. They would down-res it to 2K DPX files. That would go off to color grade. That would go off to the special effects guys. So at the end of the day, you have a 2K master of the film and nothing else. A 4K version of the film completed doesn't exist.
You can't even get the 4K if you wanted to.
No, they didn't make it. So for studios to go back and claim that they're going to have a 4K release of something like that, they have to go back to the raw files. They got to reconform it, regrade it, redo all the special effects in 4K, do all the compositing in 4K. That's going to take like $20-30 million per title to do. Studios don't want to do that. And that's a problem. That's a really big problem.
And this is basically the equivalent, guys, for the guys who are more on the gaming side of things. This is equivalent of Sony putting out a game and it's only in its native resolution is 720p, and they say its native resolution is 1080p when they're just upscaling it. It's the equivalent of that, and that's why it's such a big deal.
Yeah, I would even say this is worse, I think. I mean, when you're playing a game and it does, up conversions and upscales inside, like, that's, depending on the size of your TV and whatnot and the immersive experience of it, you can kind of let some of that slide. The P's and the K's in video games, it's if it's a good game, it'll be a good game, I think. But when you're looking at, especially Ultra HD 4K, it's not going to be the same thing. It's just, you're going to just upscale content and expect people to buy it as the next thing. It's not right.
Why do you think, though, on top of it, too, that, like, when HD TVs came out, there was 720p, 1080i, 1080p. We kind of saw even the cable companies and stuff jump over a lot quicker. Why do you think they're not doing the same thing with 4K? Like, that's always... like, 4K's been out now for a couple years, like, where it's been very affordable.
Yeah, well, I think the problem lies, again, with the content creators. Let's just look at, just primetime network TV. Again, everything is shot at 2K. Most of everything. Like 90% of, all the shows that you see on NBC, CBS, ABC, it's not shot at 4K. And no one's really jumping on board and making sure that these shows are shot in 4K or film anymore. Is everything, so much of TV is shot on the Arri Alexa. And again, they're either shooting 2K or, 2.5K probably. And if anything, it's going to be an up-res. And there's also some shows that are shooting on red, whether 4K or 5K or, 4K with a 5K look around. Again, their post isn't done at full resolution. There's a handful of shows that have been doing that. Some of the shows on Netflix do come to mind, like we said, House of Cards, I believe Daredevil, some of the later seasons of Breaking Bad, I believe got a 4K treatment. But, again, it's the content. There's just not enough of it to justify the cable companies shifting to 4K right now. I think it's going to happen again with HD. I think live television and sports are going to kind of pave the way for 4K broadcasting. It's probably, I would say, what was the first HD thing that was out on cable? It was like, you can watch Jay Leno in HD. That was it. And then kind of like sports took over, but even sports started with 720p.
I think one of the first things I remember, and it was shocking because you would never think they'd be the first, was friggin' PBS, man. They had like documentaries in like 1080i and 4K that they were filming at. Not 4K, I mean 720p and 1080i.
Yeah.
Where the hell did 4K come from? I remember like that was one of the first things I saw where they adopted HD, and that was early on. Do you think that the reason why that maybe, and I know we're kind of shifting topics, but it's still part of the 4K thing, is that when you went from even like 720p from a regular standard CRT television, it was like going from having cataracts to getting them removed. Do you think because maybe the jump it's noticeable, but it's not as significant? Is that part of the reason why we're not seeing everyone jump on the 4K bandwagon?
I agree to a point. I mean, there's a thing of perceived resolution. If you have a 4K screen that, is, 10 feet away from you, you're not really going to see the difference unless you're like really close to it. And then like even now, like the 8K system's coming out now. God, yeah. There's no reason to have an 8K TV unless you have like a 100-inch plus screen. I think that's going to be great for cinemas and stuff like that. But 8K in the home, I mean, I'm sure one day it's going to be like a commonality, like the norm.
Yeah, you're going to be able to get a Vizio for $400 at 8K.
Yeah. I think it's going to get to a point where resolution is going to be kind of irrelevant. Yeah. They're just kind of just put a retina moniker on things, which I think is kind of like the way to go. I think people will stop looking at resolutions and whatnot when the pixels are small enough to be like not visible.
It's been that way on phones for ages now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, I think it's, as far as your question on people not being able to tell the difference, I think it's the same thing with video games. As every generation, the gap just gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
So I think, the high-end video files are going to, see that difference. But it's funny because my parents just bought a 4K TV.
Because you said, what was it, like not even a $300 difference in between?
Exactly. I mean, my parents have been rocking a 30-inch Toshiba CRT since 1995. It still works great, but it's big, it's clunky, it's 4x3, and my parents have a big family room. And that TV was like $1,500 in 1995. It was expensive.
Top tier. Yeah.
It was a big deal. And I finally convinced my parents it's time to move on. So we were gonna get just a 1080p set, 65-inch, and there was a special at Best Buy for like $9.99. But by the time we got there, it was out of stock. They wouldn't let us order it. So my stepfather was looking and said, "Well, maybe we should just get a 4K." I'm like, "Well, you don't really need a 4K. There's nothing really to watch." But the price difference was like an extra $300. So we just figured, why not? So
it makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would you not future-proof yourself for that little amount of money? It just makes no sense not to. Yeah,
exactly.
It would just be dumb not to. With that computer now, you could actually utilize 4K on it if you can't get it on TV. But do you think with Blu-ray, do you think there may be like class action lawsuits that come if they try to deceive people? Like,
I don't know. I mean,
is there some legal loophole that maybe Sony and everyone knows about?
I think it all depends how they market it, and how many asterisks are going to be there and whatnot. But again, like, I'm using the Avengers as kind of like an example here because the movie wasn't shot in 4K. Like, it doesn't exist in 4K, and neither have the recent Marvel films. Some of the earlier ones like Iron Man and so forth, that was shot on 35. So, you can say that a 4K conversion is going to be possible, but are they going to go back and redo all the effects in 4K? No.
No.
So, is half of it going to be in 4K and anything with special effects is going to be upscaled? I don't know how they're going to handle it. It's just, it's a disaster waiting to happen. And I'm terrified. I'm terrified that it's just going to really tarnish the whole 4K movement.
Yeah, people are just going to give up and say, screw it, I'm going to stick to 1080p. 4K has been such a weird adoption. Like, it's everywhere, it's affordable, but there's no content, and now there's content that could possibly come out, and it may not actually be 4K, which will make it shady, which will turn people off to it. And really the only thing that you could truly do in 4K right now, minus a handful of shows, is if you have a powerful enough computer, game. And even some of that, the textures aren't meant for 4K.
Yeah.
So it's like there's nothing really 4K minus a handful of video and games out there.
You can watch logs burning on YouTube.
Yes, you can. I had them up there. Actually, that was 1080p. That wasn't 4K, but still, you can watch logs on YouTube.
The thing that bothers me is, this day and age, we're capable of keeping content 4K all the way. I have a small production company. I'm kind of a one-man band in a lot of things. I recently did a short film, and it's going through festivals, and it's doing really well.
It's doing amazingly well.
And
very well.
Pretty much single-handedly, I handled the post on that film, and I kept it 4K from the beginning to the end. That one was actually shot 4K on a Red Scarlet. We shot that like 3 years ago. And I did an offline edit in 1080p, then conformed it back to 4K. When I did all these special effects work, I did all the effects at 4K resolution, and then when I did my renders, I rendered out both 4K and 2K at the same time. I mean, we are primarily focused on the 2K release because when we're going to film festivals, most film festivals aren't set up to display 4K.
Which is nuts.
Exactly. But at the same time, we made sure to have a copy of our film ready in 4K. We were actually contacted by a distributor before the film was even finished because we put up our trailer in 4K on YouTube, and I guess they were looking for 4K content. And there are several companies out there that are specifically targeting content creators that are making things in 4K and kind of in preparation to roll that out to Netflix and Amazon and even the cable companies when they're ready to accept 4K content. And it's just such a slow push, again, because there's no content. People may be shooting stuff in 4K, but not a lot of people are taking it all the way down the pipeline and keeping it 4K to the very end.
And just to bring up an interesting point, you're not even using like a brand spanking new Mac to do this on, are you?
No. I mean, I started doing 4K stuff. I had a 2006 Mac Pro Tower, which actually I still have that machine. I still edit on it when I need to as a second system. But I did several projects all the way 4K on that machine. It was a little sluggish and it was kind of a pain in the ass, but it worked. Now I've got a 2012 Mac Pro Tower because I didn't want to buy into that cylinder POS that Apple has now.
Trash,
that's a whole other video that we got to get into. But yeah,
God.
I guess, if one person can take a project from
my
start to
point.
finish in 4K, then why can't a studio and a film with like $100 million budget do that
with billions of dollars in the bank to handle shit like that?
And honestly, I still think I think it's about money. I think it's it's like, well, they make up some bullshit reasons why they can't keep it in 4K, or it's going to cost X amount of dollars now to do it in 4K. But it's really it's to make more money later to redo it. But the studios aren't going to want to do that, so they're kind of losing out. In the end,
they're trying to maximize profit now, but they're not future-proofing themselves and looking into the future. It's really shitty.
Yeah,
it's what it comes down to, and that was the point why I brought up Jarek's computer. Is that it's not that you need to have like this insanely expensive bleeding edge tech or computer to render 4K files and do 4K effects. He's doing it on, you have a 2012 Mac and a 2006 Mac, so that's not the issue. It's, I don't know, 4K is a mess. 4K is a mess when it comes to gaming. 4K is a mess when it comes to movies and television. It's just been such a weird adoption process, and I just don't know what the hell is going to happen with it.
Yeah, it's confusing, and it's like a lot of the people on the content end that even are shooting 4K, they have the right idea, and they think that they're future-proofing it by just shooting in 4K, and they are in a sense, but it's almost like the people that control the content on the post end, if they don't pony up the money to keep it 4K the whole way, it's they might say, oh yeah, we'll go back later and redo it, but that's just a load of crap in my opinion. Because
no, they're not going to.
Once you do a $100 million project and finish it, to go back and redo effects, especially like. Or for example, another thing was brought up. All of the Lord of the Rings films, the trilogy, and then the Hobbit films, the first 3 films, they were shot on film. The Hobbit series was shot on Red Epic at 5K. But again, all those films, all of them were finished at 2K. All the effects, all the post was done at 2K. Those films do not exist in 4K. So if, unless they go back and do a complete overhaul on each film, they can't release these films and say they're 4K because it's just going to be an up-res. It's going to be an upscale.
And they are going to try to re-release those movies and say they're 4K.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they're going to have some little asterisk, like with font that you're going to need like a microscope to see it, saying this actually isn't in 4K. The effects were not done in 4K. They were done in 2K. And that'll be their legal loophole.
Yeah, honestly, our best bet at true 4K releases are going to be the earlier films. Probably, anything done, before the year 2000 has the best chance of getting a true 4K release. Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, where those films shot on film, the effects were done, in camera or optically done later. So when they have, their master on a 35 millimeter print, they can just scan that into 4K. I think it probably resolves somewhere just under 4K, like 3.8 or something like that. Yeah. But, I'll take that, up-resing that to 4K and calling it 4K. Yeah, I'll buy that. But these newer films, again, if they didn't have a final master in 4K and they just up-res that from 2K to 4K, I mean, you can do some pretty amazing things with up-resing and interpolation and whatnot, but that's a scam in my opinion. That's just flat out lying.
People are paying for native 4K. They're not paying for upscaled 2K or 1080p or whatever. They're paying for it to be 4K, and they're expecting. So I'm sure the Blu-rays when they first are out there. I don't know. Do they even have 4K Blu-rays yet? Do they?
They're not out yet. They just like finally completed the specifications and all that. I mean, I know they have machines ready to go. And again, I think they're waiting on the studios to have their releases ready. Because, I mean, what's the point of a 4K Blu-ray player if there's nothing to play on it?
Yeah.
I mean, and there's also going to be, again, there's a lot of confusion now. Because if you look up, if you just type in 4K Blu-ray, a whole bunch of stuff's going to come up because they have Blu-ray players that say 4K on it, but all they do is upscale your 1080p Blu-rays
to 4K.
and output it
And it's confusing.
at 2160p, and it says 4K on it. It's just kind of deceiving. They should really, once the 4K Blu-ray players hit, it's going to be hard to differentiate the difference between a 4K upscaling 1080p Blu-ray player and a true native 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Like, I'm having trouble just saying these things.
And it's going to turn the not, layman may be the wrong word, but the consumer who's not a video file who still may want 4K, they may be turned off because they're not going to know what's 4K and what isn't. I mean, you could flip it around and say, oh, Rich, that means they won't really care then. But if they're going out and buying a 4K Blu-ray player, yeah, they will, because they're expecting 4K. What do you mean? Because I'm sure people will say, oh, they're not going to notice and it's not going to be a big deal. But if they're going out of their way to buy a 4K Blu-ray player, they're going to be expecting 4K. So how can you say that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, another thing interesting too. I think you were the one who told me that the original Star Wars, the prequels, they weren't done They were done with what?
The first one, I think episode 1, that was still shot 35mm, and then there was like 2 or 3 scenes that they shot on the Sony Cinalta 1080p systems as like a test.
Oh God!
Do you remember that? And
yeah.
They made a big deal out of it. Like, we're not going to tell you which scenes were shot on 1080p video. It was like some crowd scenes during the pod races or some shit like that. But then episodes 2 and 3 were done primarily on Sony Cinalta 1080p systems, and those were those crazy $250,000 1080p cameras from Sony that again, it's 1080p. It's you can't claim that that's going to be 4K. Yeah. It just doesn't exist.
And the master files are 1080p. So if they come out with Blu-rays of the prequels of Star Wars and they tell you it's 4K, you definitely know.
Yeah, and actually, I don't even think that was full HD. I think the initial Sony Cinalta systems that shot HD cam, not HD cam SR, but the original HD cam spec is like 1440 by 1080p.
Oh, so it's almost like 1080i or whatever. I don't know what 1080i.
Well, it's like that. It's
I thought 1080i was 1440.
It's not the full frame full HD. It's just the way they compressed it down to make it fit in the bandwidth specification.
The bottom line is this, and we'll end this because Jarek and I could probably talk about this for 3 days straight, is when 4K Blu-ray players come out, just be aware if they're telling you a movie's in 4K, it may not really be in 4K.
And, I think you're going to have to do a lot of homework on 4K Blu-ray. And it's basically, if you're interested in a movie, it's very easy to just look up online what camera was used to film what movie and what the master file was created, like what it was mastered in, whether it was a 2K or 4K release or whatnot. I mean, there was a handful of films that did get a 4K treatment. Gone Girl comes to mind, stuff like that. But again, we're talking about films that didn't have a whole bunch of special effects in every other shot. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, all the Marvel films. I think the first titles that we're going to see coming out in native 4K are going to be the ones that didn't have a lot of special effects, which makes sense, because if it's as simple as just going back to the source native 4K files and just regrading them, even just doing another pass out of Resolve or whatever, then that's one thing. That's not going to take long. That's going to take a team of guys a couple days to do.
When there's a lot of effects, there's a lot of posts that you got to
exactly. Even there was a great featurette on that movie Ender's Game. I didn't watch it because it honestly didn't look like a very good movie, but I was interested in the post process because this whole write up. It was a great. You can look it up on YouTube probably for Ender's Game. Their whole post workflow. It was handled by Light Iron Digital, which is a great post house that handles media management and color correction and so forth. But the thing that was just so shocking to me, they shot this on Red Epic 5K, and before it went anywhere, they downres it to 2K DPX, and this is 235:1, so it's actually below 2K resolution because it's that wider format.
Yes, the wider, yeah.
So before it goes to, color and effects and everything, none of these guys are getting the full 5K files to work with. So they're getting half resolution files from the get-go. So, they pretty much limit what they can do with it before anyone sees it. And again, if you're talking a film that every other shot has green screen work or special effects and compositing, you're going to end up with a 2K master, and that's it. You're basically going to have to completely redo 100% of the post to get it into native 4K.
And they're not going to do that.
But the sad part is they can. When the assets are there, when they shoot these things in 5K, 6K, now we're going to be, they just announced Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is going to be the first film shot on Red's new 8K VistaVision weapon dragon system. It's if Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't get a 4K finish all the way through, what is the point of shooting on these high-end camera systems if you're just getting a 2K finish? You're just cheating everyone.
Yeah, that makes no sense either. Why do you have these high-end systems if you're not utilizing them?
I mean, yeah, it's the same thing back in the day when HD first started coming out. I mean, yeah, I got an HD camera, but I was still producing in standard definition, and HD scaled down to SD looked great. And now it's the same thing going forward.
You just took the continue. But
yeah, initially, my first few projects when I got into Red, again, everything, no one's asking me for 4K content, but 4K scaled down to HD looks fantastic. And here's where I see 8K shining. It's 8K is going to provide better 4K masters in the end. So if the goal is to end up with a great pristine 4K finish, shooting in 8K is gonna do that. But if you're not going for that 4K finish, 8K is a little bit of overkill there.
A lot of bandwidth taken up too, and a lot
exactly.
of space.
So I mean, it's there to kind of push 4K along, and I hope that it does. But if you're shooting in 8K and only still doing a 2K master, there's just something wrong with the whole picture. And it's almost like the guys creating these films, that's what they have in mind. They want to keep these films in the highest format possible, but down the road, down the post pipeline, the people making these decisions, the guys holding the money, if they don't want to pony up for a 4K, process the whole way, it's just kind of a waste.
Yeah, it is. It's when you go out and you're looking to get into 4K, just be mindful of all this. I think we just scared off probably like 100,000 people from going into 4K, which honestly I don't blame them, because like I said, the TVs are everywhere, the graphics cards. I'm like, I have a Titan X and that thing can do 4K, not as well as it should, but that's a totally different story. You can do 4K, but the content isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the bright side going forward, I think we're on the cusp of things starting to change. Mm-hmm. Because the way people were looking at it before, there was no 4K outlet for anything. So, well, we can finish it in 4K, but there's no way to show it to anyone, or it's just the studios were just kind of looking at it from the point of, well, it doesn't make sense to do a 4K finish.
Which for a time was true.
Yeah, for a time it was true, but it's shooting yourselves in the foot. Yeah. I mean, that's the one of the leading things that the guys over at Red Digital Cinema were touting from the beginning. It's like 2K is not enough. Do not shoot your films in 2K because you're gonna regret it in the future. And going forward, I think things are about to change. But again, there's this gap of about 10 years where we have a ton of films that are stuck at 2K, and they're never going to be able to get out of that. Truthfully.
Just crazy. And on the gaming side of it, you have the modding community doing more for 4K than you have the actual developers. It's just ass backwards in both genres.
Yeah, like I had assumed, like when they were announcing the PS4 and the Xbox One, like I had no doubt in my mind that these are going to be like 4K like gaming beasts.
No, I knew they weren't going to.
It made sense to me that, and like PlayStation 4, like I assumed it was going to have 4K kind of like as like their leading thing, because I mean 4K was around, when those systems launched.
It was kind of affordable when they launched too.
Yeah, exactly.
It was only not a little over 2 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
So, you know, when thinking back how long the previous gen lasted, I'm like, well, you know, logically I was thinking these machines are going to have to be 4K, because if they plan on keeping them around for a decade or so,
They're not going to keep them around for a decade this time. Well, in their defense, like, I have the top of the line card from NVIDIA, the Titan X. You're not getting 4K 60 FPS with that card. For them to put in something that would be a GPU that would be 4K capable, we're going really off topic, but whatever. The systems would have to be like $700, $800, and no one would buy them.
yeah.
So it was kind of like, okay, do we make a solid next gen platform that'll give mostly 1080p, which kind of doesn't, but that's a different story too, or do we gouge them again? Because the economy, even in 2013, which it may be getting bad again, no one was going to go out and buy. Look at the PS3 when it first came out. It was $600. People laughed at it. You know what I'm saying? For that, so it was kind of like, okay, do we make an affordable 1080p system people will buy, or we take the risk and try to make it so it could push 4K? And I knew they weren't going to do that. It's kind of disappointing because they barely could get games to run at 900p this gen, but it is what it is. I mean, you could get a PS4.
Yeah, that Bob, like you always say, the fact that this current generation, some of these games can't be running 1080p, like, that boggles my mind. It's just, like you said, 1080p has been a thing since like 2003.
Yeah. So my dad got his first 1080i TV.
It's almost like these developers shouldn't even be allowed to make content that's not native 1080p on these systems.
The hardware is the bottleneck, though. I mean, look at Star Wars Battlefront is only 900p, 60 FPS mostly on the PS4, and it's 720p. 60 FPS mostly on the Xbox One. 720p in the year it came out in 2015. 720p, that's like 2004, 2005. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's 360 games that run at 720p. Xbox 360. Shouldn't be, man. It's... anyway, we just went totally off topic. But the bottom line is when we'll end the video right here. If you're getting into 4K, you know there's a 4K Blu-ray player coming out and you're all psyched. You're getting that big curved LG 4K screen.
Don't get the curved TVs. That's stupid.
People like them. I haven't seen them up front. I can't make a judgment call. I've seen like one for 10 seconds and I couldn't tell if I liked it or not.
It's a gimmick, guys. It's like just the next thing that, you know, it's like, oh, what's the new thing that we can say is new so people will buy it? Oh, let's curve the display, you know, crappy viewing angle. It's got to sit in the middle. It's just that, you know, we didn't shoot our content to be viewed like that. But I digress. It's just like the 120 hertz smooth motion bullshit setting that they put on every TV. It pisses me off so much. Not to digress a little bit, but it's like, you know, as a filmmaker, it's like, it's not the television manufacturer's right or call to tell someone how they're going to watch my content. It's like a TV manufacturer saying, shipping the film default in black and white mode with the color all the way down. Just like, oh, we just feel it looks better in black and white. It's like, it says who? You didn't make this. It's not your call to tell people it looks better in black and white. Well, it's also not your call to change the frame rate perception on our content, you know, and make everything look like a shitty soap opera.
Yeah, it looks terrible. It looks terrible too.
And it's on by default. It boggles my mind. Like, if they made it off by default, I wouldn't have a problem with it. And if you're an idiot and want to go in and turn that on and, you know, have everything look like a home video, that's fine. But, you know, it's like, leave our content alone. It's not your call to tell your audience how our stuff should be viewed.
And I hate the way it looks too. I know I'm going on a tangent too. It looks like, it doesn't even look like it's 60 FPS where it's smooth. It almost gives me a headache. I can't explain it. Like, I feel like I'm getting
because basically what it is, all the frames in between the 24 frames per second is just kind of like, it's almost like a morph between frames. So it's like,
oh yeah,
it's morphing extra frames to fill in that 60 FPS.
No. Yeah, and you notice it too. And like I said, it's like disorienting. So, bottom line is this: if you're going 4K, you're going 4K Blu-ray player. Just be mindful, man.
Just know what you're getting. Know what you're getting into. Do your homework. Do your research. And you know, don't get conned by the studios. I would speak up about it. I'm definitely going to be in Best Buy talking to managers and letting them know what's going on, and making sure that consumers are aware of what they're buying.
Because you sure as shit know that they are going to charge the same price for a 2K mastered film that they are for an actual 4K mastered. They're not going to give you a price cut. Those films are still going to be $40 or whatever the hell they're going to make them be on Blu-ray. They are not going to give you a discount. So you may be thinking you're getting 4K and you're getting 2K and you're getting it upscaled. So, all right, guys, this is Rich at Review Tech USA along with Jarek. We're going to be talking about Codename NX first and Nintendo. Make sure to rate, comment, favorite, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for supporting my channel. Have a good one.